Hello, my name is Edward Lavilla. I am the Communications and Outreach Chair for Chasing Freedom, Virginia. Today we're conducting interviews with the House of Representatives 7th Congressional District candidate, John Prabhudoss. He is a Republican candidate, and we are honored that he allowed us to interview him today. Thank you very much, John, for this opportunity. And in Chasing Freedom, Virginia, we want to give all the candidates the opportunity to actually present themselves, to share their ideas, and to get to know you a little bit more, as it's important for our these coming elections. And we want to start right now just asking you questions first about faith. So our first subject today is going to be, we believe that religious liberty is a cornerstone of our Constitution and must be protected as a human right. What have you done over the course of your life in demonstration of that belief? Just tell us about your religion views in relation to our constitutional republic.
Thank you for inviting me for Chasing Freedom interview. The question that you have is, how important it is the religious freedom in a country?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there was a time in Washington that people were thinking, well, religious freedom is not necessarily a mainstream policy issue. Now, that was a very wrong assumption, because in any given country, whether it's the US or Europe or in Asia, Africa, what people believe matters, and what people believe to be their civic rights or what they believe in terms of their religious faith has no difference. It is as important as anything else. So why would Washington, or why would we ignore the religious faith of the people when we make our policies? It was a mistake that was corrected by the Religious Freedom, International Religious Freedom Act, to put religious freedom in the very center of our foreign policy. Now, domestically, if you look at, this country was founded on the principles of religious freedom. In the 1700s, they were fleeing the persecution in the name of religion, right? It's a history. Most of our younger generation don't understand it or don't know it, but it is our responsibility to inform them, to let them be aware that this country was founded on that very principle, that if you take away the religious freedom of people, let's assume that if you're taking away the voting rights of the people, then what will happen in our society? And why would taking away the religious freedom or putting restrictions on religion would be any different, is the way I look at it. It's a very fundamental aspect of who we are. Who we are as a society, as a community. And so to take away the religious freedom of the people from any population, whether it's the Western countries, we have a very progressive idea of religious freedom, but in other countries it is very restrictive. And so it makes a lot of difference for us too. It makes a lot of difference for people when religious freedom is taken away from them. And I for the last 35 years worked on the religious freedom issues. I mean, I worked for advocating for the persecuted Christians around the world for 35 some years in Washington. I've seen at one time there was a lot of people who were really concerned, really interested in working on issues like that, but then it was fading away, as if some of the progressives in this country don't believe in religious freedom for everyone, because when it comes to, there is a reverse reaction, or how do I say it? When in the U.S. now we are looking at it like the religious freedom for anyone other than Christians is fine, but when it comes to the Christians, or the religious freedom or the separation of state and church applies, but for others, we kind of bend backwards to accommodate, and we are willing to make concessions. But I think that's a kind of a troubling trend. I think that is a very healthy way of looking at it going forward.
And that also segues into our second question. So we're going to switch here to family. and family values. And in Chasing Freedom, Virginia, we believe the family is the most essential and most empowering organization in our shared human existence. What are your thoughts on the status of the American family today? And if elected, what will you do to uplift and promote the restoration of the American family?
See, the very fundamental unit of a society is a family. The moment you take away the definition of what a family is made of, then you are striking at the very root of our society. Now, it is not just dangerous for the, traditional families. It is a danger on the very survival of us as a species. Think it that way. The reason I'm saying that, the family is made up of a father and a mother, children, 1 or 2, 5, 6, whatever you want to have, how many children you want to have, it's up to you. But that is the definition of a family, right? Now, when you take that away and say, well, it doesn't have to be that way, then the future, we are taking away the foundation on which the species have survived for the last whatever number of years that may be. You are telling the younger generation that the family can be, 2 mothers, 2 fathers, or 3 fathers. Then there is no procreation. Without the procreation, there is no future. I mean, you can have, the family is not, it could be, but it's not just limited to recreation only, right? Now, if you are going to reduce the definition of a family to just recreation and individuality and not focus on the future generations, how are we going to survive as a species? So, I remember in the early 90s when George Bush Sr. Ran for re-election, there was this controversy. There was this TV show in which, they started kind of mocking the traditional family values, right? And it became a big issue. And the reason I'm saying that is because it is not just in this generation that we see. I mean, it has been promoted by a radical left that wants to redefine what we are as a species is not necessarily a healthy trend. And I would say, but if you talk about, then they will say you are a right-wing person. It's not about right-wing, left-wing. It is about a viable family is made of a father, a mother who are able. There are some of them who are not able, but that's a different issue, who are able to produce children and rear them in the belief system that they have known. This has nothing to do with the religion or whether it's a conservative liberal thing. It is the fundamental thing that we need to be. We cannot destroy the definition of a family. We need to be very careful about how do we define, how do we treat, because all these rules and regulations, the inventions, the world that we have built for ourselves is for people. And the people come from family, right? I mean, people don't fall from the heaven, from the sky. People come in the families, and the families are the very fundamental unit of our society. Undermining that is just silly.
And talking about people, we switch here for our civil rights. And as we believe that all citizens, in order to realize their fullest potential, are entitled to equal rights, equal justice, and equal opportunity, but not equal outcomes. With regard to civil rights, what do you think is the most pressing issue that we're facing, and what will you do to help the situation if elected?
Can you redefine that?
So the question is we believe that in order to have a full potential, everybody is entitled to equal rights, equal justice, and equal opportunity, but not equal outcomes. So in regard with civil rights, what do you think is the most pressing issue currently, and what do you do or what will you do to help the situation if you're elected?
You have to have a historical perspective on this stuff. I understand the arguments today that, well, we don't have to have a certain giving a leg up to someone who a student for the first time entering college, who comes from a very different, very disadvantaged family environment or economic environment. If how do I put it? If I and my brother are entering workspace, finishing college with similar educational background, similar economic background, there is no need to favor one over the other. I'm not saying, favoring is a very wrong word. There are two different individuals. One comes from a very advantaged position where his family uh, had reaped the benefit of economic and educational benefits for several generations. And there is another child that is also entering into space. And I think as a society, maybe in the short run, in the immediate thing, it may look very bad. But in the long term, what happens is if we do not provide that leg up for someone coming from a very disadvantaged position, what happens in the long term, the gap increases. The gap between these two generations, two people, I mean, their children and their grandchildren are going to be continuously in that position. That is not good for, in the long term, for any country. To have
And specifically in regards to what you think is the most present issue in that regard, and what would you do to help that situation?
I mean, there's a lot of discussions in our public space about this particular contentious issue. What I think is, we have to look at it. What would Jesus do? Two different people coming from two different backgrounds, two different economic situations, and obviously, if I'm in the hiring position, I'm the owner of a company. I have, by the way, I have several small businesses I've started, and if I look at it, what is good for me immediately, that I can hire person X, and I don't have to spend too much time training. He will be able to pick it up right away, and I can pay him. Even if I pay him more, it's worth it. But then there's another person who's coming, who's not, I mean, I may have to spend additional time training that person. Will, from strictly from an economic perspective, does it make sense? No, it doesn't make any sense. But then from a social responsibility perspective, is that the right thing to do? I'm not ignoring the person with advantages, but to ignore the other person, will that be the right thing for me to do? Is there any way that I can somehow find a way to help that other person? It's a question that we have to be comfortable with that. I'm not saying it can be legislated. I don't want this to be legislated, but this is something that religious organization, churches, can take it up and take it as a moral issue. I don't think we have to know the same way, and I don't believe in legislating minimum wage. No, it has to be up to the market to do it. Similarly, can we legislate these things? It is very hard to legislate morality. You could have legislations on the book to guide the morality based on your moral values, but that alone cannot, I don't think that will be the solution.
And in terms of legislation, let's switch to criminal justice. Based on our belief that men and women are innocent until proven guilty, what are your concerns regarding the criminal justice system as it is today? And most importantly, if you're elected, what will you do? For example, mass incarceration, prisons, U.S. drug policy, etc.
What do they say is about 10% of the population commits 90% of the crimes in the country? Is that what? It's something like that, something along those lines. Don't quote me on it, but something along those lines is what people say. Like I said, I have started several small businesses. Now my wife runs those small businesses. Crime is something that we deal with on a daily basis. Robberies, armed robberies, it's theft, break-ins. This is something that we are used to dealing with, right? Especially in a retail business. There's no way around it. And one time you just sit down and wonder, why are we doing this? Is it even worth it to risk our employees' lives of our employees? And break-ins for a pack of cigarettes. They break in and cause $2,000-$3,000 worth of damage just for a pack of cigarettes in the middle of the night. Now, is it a serious crime? Stealing a pack of cigarettes? Is it a serious crime? Depending on who you talk to, The answer depends on who you talk to, right? But then what I look at when I see how that prosecution unfolds in the criminal justice system, some of us just basically say, well, it's not a serious enough crime, so let him go. Not even without a bond, right? They let him go. Then what happens within a month, he does the same thing in another location. Now, it is a social cost that we have to, but then what is causing this thing? Where is the root cause of this problem? Again, that inequality that we talked about earlier, right? When people are not living, are not up to the standard that we expect from an advanced society, we ignore them, we push them away, and they end up doing the things that they don't have not that they don't have a choice, but it's easier for them to be involved in those kind of criminal, whether it's a petty criminal things or even a serious crime. They are pushed to a position, right, situation in life. And so I think we as a society should look at this problem more closely and not necessarily say things are very closely tied into this thing. So we need to look at it very closely and say, what kind of things that we could do to help people rather than labeling them, right? So
And in terms of helping people and helping law-abiding citizens, now we can also switch to talking about the Second Amendment. So we were previously talking about the criminal justice system, and in some states, including our beautiful state of Virginia, or the Commonwealth of Virginia, they have passed red flag laws. They are also referred as gun violence restraining orders, extreme risk protection orders, or emergency substantial risk orders. What are your thoughts about these laws, and what would you do about them if you're elected?
it's a lot of my friends will cringe when I say guns don't kill people. It's people who kill people, right? It is an argument that people there is a divide in our society. If you go to metropolitan cities, larger cities, there are no hunting grounds. They don't need a gun to hunt or recreation or whatever. They don't have to. So they have a different perspective. But it happens in my district. Okay, in the 7th district, if you look at it, there are urban areas like Fredericksburg and Prince William County and parts of Stafford County. But then there are counties which are very rural, Greene County, Madison County, Culpeper County, and Orange County. There, it is a way of life for people to have weapons. Now, if we are saying one crazy guy went and caused some harm somewhere, horrible things happened in schools and other places, is it fair for us to say that law-abiding citizens should surrender their weapons, or they don't have right to own or use their weapon legally? It is not. I think the focus needs to be how do we deal with mental health issues? How do we deal with symptoms that whenever we find symptoms of unstable people, using or having access to guns. See, I have guns in my home, rifles, handguns. I have a 13-year-old son also in the house. Now, he knows that he doesn't have access to it. And when we go for shooting range, there are places where he could practice target shooting. But that doesn't mean that he would be able to carry a gun with him. We don't need to create more laws to deal with the gun issues. We need to put to practice the laws that we already have. I mean, one of the things that I also found it very strange is that at one time, a few years ago, the Congress, I think it was 2 Congresses ago, they were very proud of saying, we passed so many laws in this Congress. It's not. I mean, I don't think we should be having a metric measurement as to how many laws were passed. We get to see how the laws that we passed, with 1 or 10 or 100, that improve the lives of the people. And so it's in the same way, whether it's laws that are related to the gun control or regulating the gun market, I'll be happy to look at if there are some loopholes that needs to be plugged. But I don't think we need sweeping changes to create laws that would impact that industry.
Okay. And talking about life and how precious life is, and we believe that all life is precious and they must be protected. What are your thoughts about abortion? I know on babies who survive abortions.
You picked all the hot topics, but it's okay. I want to tell a quick story. All right. When I and my wife were planning to have a child, there was some issues, medical things, and then eventually she conceived. But at that time, I was 40 plus, 45 years old, and my wife was also older. The ideal age that they say, she was outside of that bracket. And so the gynecologist, then we went to see, basically throw numbers at you and say the percentage of having defects, birth defects, is astronomically higher the older you get. And they don't tell you directly, but they talk to you so much so that you don't have a choice but to abort the child. And I think the 12th week or so that they wanted to do an amniotic. And I said, we said, no, we're not going to do that. So the gynecologist said, maybe we'll run an amniotic test to see if there are any birth defects. And reluctantly, I said, okay, because the statistic that they throw at you, you don't have, to say no to it looks very irresponsible, right? That's the way the environment is built around it in such a way that we said, okay, we'll do an amniotic test. And then the day of the test, I was told that there is a good chance that we may lose the child during that procedure. So what? I said, it is, what is the word they used? It is not comfortable for the child and that it could, there is a possibility. Then we said no. And then the question is, what if there is a birth defect? Say it's a child who will live with it. So this is a personal conviction that I have. But I don't want to impose my personal desire or conviction or my faith or what I believe in on other people. They want to have a different decision. It's up to them. What I would say is, I don't want to pay for it. You want to, do whatever you want to do. It's on you. The tax money should not be used for it. Now, the tax money, at the same time, I'm totally against the word ban, right? We are a civilized society. We don't need to ban anything. The government doesn't have to come in and ban anything. We should be able to make rational decisions by ourselves. So if they want to do whatever they want to do with a child, it should be entirely up to them. But if there is a role for the government, I would say the government should focus more on preserving the life than the simple solution, the short solution. Now, what I see, all the government programs, the funding, everything is tilted for one particular ideology, the child to survive. That is what I would be focusing on. And then there is, I jovially say that hold the fathers responsible. Hold them responsible. Whoever is it's not entirely the woman's responsibility. There's another person involved in it. Why are we letting him off the hook? We can focus in the positive side of the thing and providing an alternate, not providing, but the alternate is already there, but more emphasis, at least equal emphasis on an alternate option for the girl, for the child. Then I think that would be the best way to go. But am I going to ask for a ban? I don't think I would not want to ban anything. That's a principle that but I know it is, we're dealing with a life. It is not a table or a phone to make it. It's not on the unlived. We have so much concern and empathy for a cat or a dog, a pet in our home. Why can't we have same kind of empathy for a life that has
even greater sympathy, I would say.
That's what I would, that's my personal opinion, but I'm not in favor of legislating my opinion into it. I would rather help find a solution in some way, because we have to get off the principal horse. into deep trenches. I think that's why in my campaign, I would say this is the common sense policy for Virginians. We need to look at it from a very practical perspective and come to reasonable people can come to reasonable solutions. I don't want someone to say, well, he is pro-life because he talked about preserving life or suggesting alternate options. And at the same time, I don't want this camp to say, no, he is pro-abortion because he doesn't want to ban. Both positions are wrong. And we should be able to come to a reasonable place where we say, life is precious and life is rare. I mean, you go and talk to people who are not able to conceive, and you will find out how preciously they value that life.
Yeah, no, you're completely. I understand what you say, but we need to continue with the questions because we are over the time and we still have a few questions to ask.
Sure.
And I want to switch gears to Constitution. We believe that the Constitution is the law of the land, and our individual rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as enriched in the Bill of Rights, serve to limit the government as it was intended by the Founding Fathers. What have you done in your life in demonstration of that belief?
What have I done to demonstrate, you said?
Yeah, to demonstrate the belief that the Constitution is the law of the land.
For 30-some years when I worked on policy issues, and I think I would say, even though I may not have claimed that it's a constitutional basis on which I'm making the claims or working, it was all based on this grand idea of we the people, and the government should not be dictating what religious faith one should follow. At the same time, we should not have two standards for religious faith. So when you talk about Christian faith, there is one standard, and when you talk about non-Christian faith, there's another standard. That's practical terms in Washington, right? Today, I mean, it may not be constitutionally approved. It is not constitutionally approved, but yet, practically speaking, that is something troubling. I mean, the whole reason why I decided I should run for Congress is because there is a lack of leadership in the U.S. Congress when it comes to speaking for or identifying yourself or your policies based on the very principles on which the ideals which guided this republic for so long. The ideals that was a reason for the founding of this nation, not necessarily a popular stand now because our demographics changing and we need to change. I don't think, you can try to interpret the Constitution that suits your day-to-day need. But I think, we all know when the Constitution was, the framers of the Constitution meant a few things, only just 10 of them. And they meant when they framed the Constitution, they were very clear in their mind what needs to be done. I mean, there are certain arguments back and forth about, we don't have the time to get into all those arguments, but whether it's the Second Amendment is always talked about, of course, but the very First Amendment is all my work. I worked on the First Amendment rights. I mean, my work is based on what the First Amendment has been proposing.
And in talking about protecting the Constitution and actually protecting the nation, and we go and talk about a little bit about national defense. What do you think is the most pressing national defense issue today? Well, we know there are many, but for you, which one is the most important one today? And what will you do specifically to protect the United States from that threat if you are elected?
Well, this is an issue that's very dear to my heart. What I would say is this. After the Second World War, our national security doctrine went on a wrong direction. And the proof is in the pudding. If that policy was the most effective and the right policy, why do we have so much threat against the U.S. now? All the manufacturing and the jobs to China, saying that, well, that's the most populous nation on the earth, and if we can just become friends with the Chinese and have access to their market, we'll be better off. We don't need an enemy out of China. So our policy was to bribe them with jobs and manufacturing and gave all the technologies. And after 30, 40 years of that policy, today we are putting together coalitions to contain China. China has become number one enemy, not even to Russia. Russia doesn't have as much money as China has. The national security doctrine needs to be fundamentally changed. It's not what we are looking at if we can sell this rocket technology or that F-16 planes, then we have to ignore, I mean, I call it this way, our foreign policy is based on two things. One is we bribe the dictators and the despots in the world as long as they obey us. And the moment they stop obeying us or listening to us, we bomb them into Stone Age. We somehow think that is the national security doctrine for this country. And a lot of people who are running for Congress at this time, those who have been elected to Congress previously and those who are running now, believe that that is the national security doctrine, that will make us safe. We tried that in China, we failed. Then we said, okay, Osama bin Laden caused this 9/11, we bombed Afghanistan into oblivion, right? And we needed Pakistan to keep that war going. So we ignored the downgrading of democratic principles and everything in Pakistan just to keep them happy so we can fight our war in Afghanistan. Now, what that policy has got us so far.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that the national security issue that probably you will start changing if you're elected is to make it more about the economics and not so much about bombing countries that don't align?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that our national security depends on helping developing nations around the world that would agree with us in principle, in values that we hold dear to us. Instead, what we are doing now, we are bribing them with the economic aid or some military equipment and ignoring the negative direction in which they are going. They are moving away from the true democratic, pluralist, liberal democratic values. And we are still going after them to help them and giving them and providing them all the
weapons, the tools, and the money.
Yeah, we are giving economic aid. We are giving market access. We are giving them technology to keep them happy. We have tried that in China, it did not work. We have tried that in Pakistan, it did not work. We have tried that in Middle East, none of them worked. We tried, our foreign policy in South America is a mess to begin with. I don't even know where to begin. So we have created so many despots and dictators in South America because of our foreign policy doctrine that we have had. That has not secured us, that has not made us secure any bit.
Okay.
So I would say this policy, this short-term economic focused policy must change. We need to go back to our principles. And today you may not be able to sell a rocket technology or an F-16 plane to a particular country, but believe me, in the long term, you're going to be happier. In the long term, it's going to make you much safer. Then, because I can say today, we have the proof that the policies that we have followed for the last 50, 40 years has not worked. That has made us more vulnerable today than it has been ever.
And switching gears to our more domestic issues and talking about the economy, what is your opinion is the most pressing economy issue facing our country right now? And what would you do to remedy that situation?
Somehow the Department of Education for the last 30, 40 years or longer, or 50 years, has been more interested in teaching kids, whether they are a boy or a girl or what they can be, cannot be, than teaching them life skills, teaching them information technology, teaching them crafts, teaching them science and technology, right? Now, as a result, what we are doing, we are importing hundreds of thousands of skilled workers every single year, year after year, from foreign countries. Now, I'm not saying bringing foreign workers into this country is a bad idea. It could be a good thing. It helps the economy grow. It helps we have resources. We don't have to worry about it. But domestically speaking, after the manufacturing all has been shipped out to a different country, we did not prepare our children in this country, in our schools, in public school systems and in private schools, children who are able to meet the need of our information technology in this country. Now, as a result, we are bringing people from outside. And this is, again, the schools have become a breeding ground for far left radical thinking than building our nation economically. We are not producing the children coming out of our colleges, our schools are
And
not able.
we will talk about education in the few last questions. But that brings me also to the education system that you're mentioning, going back to Virginia history. And we believe that our history serves as a guidepost in our journey as a nation, to serve as reminders of our shared sacrifices as warnings for future generations. What are your thoughts on the current events regarding historical monuments, specifically here in Virginia, but in other states as well? And what do you do to restore and protect our historical symbols, our icons, our statues, and our traditions?
So there are arguments on both sides, and I've listened to both of them. Any country in its growth, every country, I would say, not any country, every country in its past has both good and great things and bad things happen. There is not a single nation under the sun that I can think of that only stayed great and did only the right things all across its history, all around, for the entire history. And American history is not the perfect one. I can think of the European history, with Germany being so productive and so advanced, also had its dark side. Now, if the children in that country are not reminded of what has happened in their past, they could easily get themselves thinking that they can be the society that they once were, and God forbid, embark on a path that could lead to something like a Holocaust. Now, I'm not saying they would. I'm saying if you don't teach them the negative side of what has happened, they could easily make themselves to believe otherwise. And same thing applies to the US. And it is in every country. I'm just giving that as a quick example because everyone knows it. In this country, in Virginia, of course, particularly, the history is mixed. We cannot wish that history away. You cannot go back and say, no, this thing did not happen. And that's not going to happen by just removing a statue here or there. Now, on the other side, they will say, and I have heard the arguments, well, that may be true, but we don't have to spend taxpayers. I don't want to keep paying my taxes to keep that monument up and spend for its upkeeping. Well, if that is the case, maybe voluntary organizations, maybe civic bodies can come together to remind people that this is what happened during the Civil War, and here is the person who did such and such thing, to both sides of the population. I think, in my personal opinion, not have that lesson taught to our children in the long term will be bad for as a society as a whole, because we want to sanitize our history, which is not our responsibility. It should be none of our business to sanitize what happened.
And on the same train of thought, what do you think? What's the role do you believe the state has in education regarding morality, religion, gender identity, etc.? And if you were elected, what would you change?
I don't think, the government, particularly the federal government, has to have any say in what's taught to the children.
The federal, but the state, in its state education, what do you think is the responsibility, and what will you do to change anything that currently is happening?
Well, to begin with, the federal government would not have anything to do with it. But at the same time, what I believe is that the elected school boards and the parent bodies should recruit experts to come up with their own syllabus as to what they want to teach their children, depending on all that things that have happened in the field of scientific research and exploration in the world, that a single parent may not know everything, but they could recruit and then have a kind of a curriculum, to come up with a curriculum for their children in their district. The state should step aside and just fund the board, the elected school boards, to take care of their business. And and at the same time, I also think, and this is probably a very controversial thing to say, but I don't think the teachers should focus more on teaching the children than having a union, for example. There you go. I said it. I think What is missing is our teachers are not teaching the children, and there is no accountability for the teachers. And if you go and ask the accountability, then the union comes and interferes with it. That's a very sad development. I think it would be better off for the parents and the elected school boards to make those decisions as to who they want to hire, how they want to run the schools, and what they want to teach the children, rather than somebody saying, well, teach everything except science and math and literature is a travesty.
And switching gears, I'm going to the veterans. That is a large community in Virginia. According to the Virginia Department of Veteran Services, there are approximately 800,000 veterans living in Virginia. What do you think is the biggest issues facing veterans today, and what would you do about that issue?
See, I did not know what PTSD was until I hired, my wife rather, hired a retired Navy veteran, not Navy, Air Force veteran, to work. And the first thing when I first met him, I said, why do you want to be in the retail business, working for almost minimum wage? Not minimum wage, but almost. And he said, John, I can't hold on to a job because I have this problem. I said, what is the problem? I said, I have PTSD. What is it? So he explained to me. And I saw how it affected his life up close. Then I was sitting there wondering, we are the advanced nation on the face of the earth, a reasonable solution to that problem. I mean, it's just one issue, right? We have made, as a society, as a government, as a country, as a nation, we have made a promise to our veterans that we will take care of them and their issues for life because of their service to this nation. And I think we have not made good of that promise in several areas. And in my opinion, there is no reason why we should blame others, or we should shift the blame, or well, put it this way. I think we should do everything possible. If we need to double or even triple our efforts to find solutions to the issues that are impacting their health. That's the number one, the most immediate thing as a society we should commit ourselves to.
All right. And well, in the last 3 minutes that we have, two very important questions on heart. What's your favorite book and why?
My favorite book. Well, my favorite books. By the way, I've just finished writing a book. It's going to be in the market within the next couple of months, before the summer. My working title is called "A House on the Upper West Side." Is the working title. The publisher modifying it, but eventually it'll come out. So in the last about 8-10 years, I've spent more time writing than reading. But before that, if you look at, I like historical fictions only because the historical fiction has some suspense, and people write it in such a way it keeps you going. Then the history itself, in some cases, how the history turned out. So it kind of, it's hard to keep the interest on it. But to name a book, I have several favorite books in my shelf and in my office as well. I think it would be a tough choice for me to select one out of that. But generally speaking, when I was in college, I used to read a lot of fiction. But then
the most recent one that you remember that caught your attention?
Most recent one, I've read a few biographies. I've read some political books to do with Middle East, which was very interesting. And what are the other books? Things. I don't know. I mean, I would say that I started reading Mr. Gates' the book Duty, but I have not finished it. I haven't even gone halfway through it.
But you read some biographies, so that actually leads to the last question. That is, if you could meet a historical figure, who that person would be, and what would you talk about?
Historical figure. There are lots of historical figures that you can ask a lot of things. I don't know. You bring any person from the history, there's plenty to ask them, right? Who would I?
Well, Chasing Freedom is giving you the opportunity. We actually have a time machine, and we can actually put you in a time machine, where do you want us to put you?
I think right now, right here, this is where I want to be. But in the past, there are several leaders who have shaped the world to what it is today. And I don't call me right-wing religious person, but I think the one single person, the course of history would be Christ. But again, do I want to ask him a question? Sure, 100 questions to ask him. But it's no, that would be kind of cheesy to say that. But outside of it, there's several leaders who have shaped the world and its course, from right here, from the birth of this nation, to leaders who led the world wars and the people who have changed the course of many nations without bloodshed. I mean, there are several people. I mean, I think it would be doing an injustice to name one person to that list. There are several.
No, but not a person for order of importance, but who's the first person that come to your mind? Like, let's say you have a list of people, but what's the first one that you want to meet?
First one that I want to meet would be from Jefferson to Gandhi to even Mr. Adolf Hitler himself. I mean, because if there is one person who has caused, who have done good things on one side and who have done a lot of bad things on one side, it would be an interesting thing for us to, if we had a chance to sit down and ask them and know their mind, it would be wonderful.
It'll be amazing, right? Well, I thank you again for these wonderful times and this interview. I hope that a lot of voters will see this interview and actually understand what you stand for and what you believe in all these questions. And again, well, I guess we'll keep in touch in our coming events.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon, guys.